Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us for our panel today on really what the heck is green when we talk about dealers, right? And what's coming up next. This is our dealer day. I'm really looking forward to this group because we have a pretty diverse group, and I'm going to have each one of them introduce themselves. But I love that we've got a dealer, we've got a data guy, and we've got a couple people from different kind of directions, I would say, from the EV world, right? And the goal of this panel is to have a lively discussion and that focuses on how we're going to bring this into the commercial space and what the benefits and opportunities are for dealers and for their customers. So I'm going to ask Ashu, would you introduce yourself and tell us who you are?
Yeah, Kathryn, thank you. Hi, everyone. I mean, Jose knows me. We've had a couple conversations earlier, and Kathryn, you know me. But for the benefit of everyone, I'm Ashu Suvarna. I lead the strategy and operations for Hitachi's industry and distribution division in Americas, and I'm based out of Plano, Texas.
Data, right?
Yeah, that's integral. That's the oil of our modern digital industry right now.
That's right. Brad?
I'm Brad Sigman. I work with Randy Marion Automotive. It's based out of North Carolina. We've got quite a few locations. And just here in the last 4 or 5 months, we've made great strides to get in the electrical side of it. We're the largest GM fleet and commercial combustion engine dealer in the world. We're doing a lot of Fords, a lot of Rams, but we've seen this switch to the electric. So we're switching over a little bit on my side, and I'm leading that charge. So that's a little bit about us.
I got to tell you, Brad, the first time I saw your guys' store, I know there's nicknames for it, but it was just mountains of trucks. I mean, there's a hill and they're all piled up, and wow, it was pretty amazing.
Full, it's great.
Yep, absolutely. Now, especially, right? We're not talking about inventory right now, but yeah. So, Jose, how about you?
Yeah, Jose Castañeda. So I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Xos Trucks. We're based here in Southern California, Los Angeles, and we make fully electric commercial trucks. So we're passionate about what we do and appreciate being part of this discussion.
Great. And Eric, last but not least.
Hi, Kathryn. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Eric Foellmer. I'm the Director of Marketing for XL Fleet. We're a leading provider of hybrid and plug-in hybrid electrification solutions for a wide range of commercial vehicles, currently class through 6. So really excited to be here today.
And you guys have been around for a while, so you've gone through the how do we do early things and how do we get to where everybody's going today, right?
Definitely.
So before we start with the questions that I'm going to be asking each of you, I pulled out some data that actually I stole from Kirk Ashu when we were on another panel with Hitachi. 82% of dealers have customers interested in buying EVs. And the demand comes from a number of things, and I'm just going to give you the top two. 77%, that's the top response, was social. And 63% was reduce cost of ownership. So I think without any more talk on my part, Ashu, let's start with you. And can you kind of bring that into some more detailed focus for us on what current research shows us about, adoption of EV and electrification?
Yeah, absolutely, Kathryn. And as you rightly mentioned, this was one of the surveys that we did early on with our dealer network and figuring as to what is the propensity to buy within the dealerships and our customers, whether they're fleets, large fleets or small fleets, are they really geared up to purchase these vehicles, and what do they see as the benefit of adoption? And going back to 2015, when we first did the survey in terms of understanding the commercial vehicle landscape of moving from the diesel vehicle mode of units, if I were to call the mobility units, to a more of electric, whether they are battery electric or hydrogen electric or hybrid electric or what have you. Back then in 2015, we were kind of given to understand or expect this rapid adoption and shift happen in the industry around 2030. But come 2020, we've seen that the pandemic has accelerated, and the tipping point advanced by about a decade in terms of the adoption of these electric vehicles. And that's owing to multiple factors. Obviously, you have the geopolitical mandates by countries, by states, by cities like London, Los Angeles, as well as governments and administrations. In addition to the geopolitical mandates, you have the entire explosion of e-commerce and the redefinition of the last mile delivery, thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, which has happened, which has increased the focus and emphasis on redefining the last mile delivery and the shift to e-commerce from traditional retail commerce for something as basic as groceries, right? So that has caused also that's one of the factors which has played in for the tipping point. And what it does is it basically provides the owners who have been traditionally dealing with trucks, gas-powered trucks or diesel-powered trucks, to look at other mobility devices, whether they are bots. For example, FedEx is right now toying with the idea of Roxo. So is UPS in terms of experimenting with variety of mobility units, whether they are drones or whether they are, electric vehicles or what have you. But so that's one thing which has added to the acceleration of adoption. Two is it's now providing dealers more units to sell, and basically their product portfolio has increased from it just being 2 or 3 models of diesel trucks to, pretty much becoming a retail electronic store, if you may say. The industry knows this, that today the vehicles are moving towards it being software on wheels rather than it being an engine on wheels, right? And so dealers are catching up to the trend, which is driving the adoption. The third thing is cities, which unfortunately over the last 2 decades have dealt with, the rapidly changing land use patterns and the collapse of traditional retail avenues that accounted for a lot of commerce for these cities, whether it be in terms of malls or shopping centers. They have been exploring avenues of how do we jump onto this new bandwagon and use it as a revenue channel for the city itself. So that has also contributed to the rate of adoption. Now, once we get onto the product side of things, you would have noticed that in the last 10, 20 years, let's just look at the rapidly reducing cost of ownership in terms of.
Ashu, you know what? I'm gonna. That was great. So I'm gonna ask you to hold on that because we're gonna talk about total cost of ownership in a little bit. I think that's where you're going next, right?
Yep.
So let's hold on. Eric, you've been around for a while, like we were saying, right? And so can you talk a little bit about what you've seen over that period of time and how what are the businesses that have adopted it, and whether or not you see what big changes you've seen over the last year?
Sure. So, as you mentioned, XL Fleet has been around for quite some time. We were actually founded in 2009. So, our first vehicles were getting on the road in the early 2010s, probably 2012 for our first vehicles. And in the early days, the interest in hybrids and really electrification in general was primarily dependent on the price of gas. So, interest would wane and rise and fall based on the amount of the price of gas at any given time. And over the years, what has actually morphed has been the fact that, as Ashu was saying, the sustainability mandates and sustainability targets have really started driving the industry. And this is really across industries, last mile delivery, all sorts of commercial vehicles, municipal vehicles, across the board. Sustainability has become a far greater mandate now, and a far greater emphasis than fuel economy. Now, fuel economy, total cost of ownership, always going to be important. But sustainability is really driving the conversations. We have a lot more inbound inquiries from companies and cities and municipalities that have recently mandated, sustainability targets, than we do for specific ROI targets. So it really has evolved over time.
And I think the same thing's true about corporate America too, right? I think that even down to the small businesses, they're being judged by their customers, whether or not they're participating in sustainability. So
that's actually correct. I thought it was great that the data that you were referencing, I think it was 72% was a social phenomenon for electrification, and that feeds right into that. It is a great, it's a great, for lack of a better term, communication tool or PR tool for a company or a municipality to have a hybrid or an all electric sticker on their vehicle. It really demonstrates the value to their constituents and people that they're driving around in those neighborhoods for.
Yep, we all see that. So Brad, as a big commercial dealer, obviously, and I think were we talking the other day, what percentage of your guys' business, can you tell us what percentage of your business is commercial compared to retail? Are you allowed to do that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as total numbers, I can't tell you by profit, but on a really good month, we'll do in the 1,500 to 1,800 fleet units a month here at this store. That's here in Ford combined and Ram. But
right.
With the addition of electric, we have in excess, I'm gonna say thousands upon thousands of people that's really interested if we can just get this stuff to market. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of people that's emailing and calling and texting and just I send it to the guys at the electric manufacturers, and we're dealing with a couple of them, and then they cannot believe this many people is wanting this much electric this fast.
Right, and I think it's okay if I say that you are also kind of early, I'll call it early in bed with a group called Electric Last Mile Solutions.
That's correct.
And in fact, collaborating because of exactly what you said, which is how is it, it's all going to be about supply now.
That's correct.
Right? And so do you want to tell us a little tiny bit about them?
Well, basically, it's at the American General plant, and it's right outside of South Bend. I could pronounce the name, but it's right outside of South Bend, Indiana. 775,000 square foot plant. They've got the line installed. Now they're trying to get the crash test passed. It looks like the crash test should pass sometime in May or June. We're hoping for the first vehicles to come off the line late July, early August. That's for the cargo van. We hope we've pulled the medium duty truck forward quite a bit. It was supposed to be May of next year, 2021, but it looks like we may get to market 6 months earlier than that on it. There is an extreme backlog already of people wanting to buy these things, and we're setting up our dealer network. We're setting up our service network nationwide. I've never been on the ground floor of anything like this in my life, and it has been really fun. I mean, it's been great.
Well, speaking of ground floors, Jose, let's talk a little bit about what you guys have been doing, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So Xos started out about 4 years ago. Our co-founders were actually fleet operators. So they know well some of the challenges and heartaches of managing fleet. That's really what prompted them to look at electrifying, or rather making an fully electric vehicle. So that's what we're doing today, and focusing on that. And I echo the sentiments and comments that there was a huge demand, a lot of interest. Surprisingly, how much of it is driven by corporate sustainability projects and initiatives. And so that's been something that has been certainly pleasing. I would make the comment that I think the interest starts because of sustainability, but the decision is still very much a cost and ROI standpoint. So everyone starts with, I have a target or an interest, but the decision studies be made at a very practical level, which again, we understand well, and we're positioned to help do that.
I think my favorite thing about actually, this whole event has been very educational for me as well. And what I love the most about EV electrification is the consultative nature of it. It really, you know, as Ashu said, it's software, right? And of course some hardware, but it's allowing the customization of the solution. So Jose, you guys are doing what class vehicles are you starting out with? And
yeah, so we're starting out with class 5 all the way to class 8. And I would say that most of our customers have an interest almost across the spectrum. And so initially we're starting out with and focusing on what we know best and where a lot of our technology has been leveraged. And in the future, perhaps looking at other classes, but primarily class 5 through class 8, and specifically last mile delivery.
You know, I noticed when Raj was talking about Ford's future a little bit ago, one of the notes that came up was asking about recharging for medium and heavy duty. So don't let me forget when we start talking about the technical stuff and the barriers. I want to have you specifically talk about that. So Eric, tell us a little bit about your products.
So we make a range of hybrid and plug-in hybrid electrification solutions for currently class 2 through 6 vehicles. Really any Ford or GM or Isuzu application, some of their most popular chassis, anything from vans to strip chassis, cutaways, you know, really anything in that full range of that light to that medium duty cycle is really within our wheelhouse currently. You know, we have plans to go, you know, further up into the class 7 and 8 range as well. But currently that's really our sweet spot. And that's really been what we've been delivering value for years. We've got about 4,000 vehicles on the road currently and about 150 million customer miles on the road so far. So as has been said many times here, we're, you know, really driven, the industry is being driven by sustainability, you know, return on investment, and there are a range of electrification solutions out there that are needed to reduce carbon emissions, and that's really what that's what we're really all here to do, and so we're all kind of contributing to that greater effort. So, you know, it's really it's a lot. There's a lot more tailwinds now, I think, than there used to be in that respect, and as some of those challenges start to get knocked down, some of the infrastructure, some of the you know, the larger you know, range concerns there, you know, as they start to come down, you'll see more and more vehicles on the road, electric vehicles, which is great.
Let's talk a little bit about the infrastructure stuff first. We're going to save whatever time we have left to do total cost of ownership, because I know that's a deep dive. Ashu, are you seeing? It was interesting to see Ford's network of charging stations that they talked about. What are you seeing in that space? And I know this wasn't a question that I told you I was going to ask.
Okay. So it's a great question, and I think we were just chatting. I mean, Eric Taylor from the audience and some others were also chatting about the whole infrastructure piece, and there was a question from Simran Pal Singh yesterday. And Roy in another chat session that we had, but what the industry in terms of when we look at the conventional passenger side of the segment, they have dealt with you know, the standard charging stations, or which are you know, things that you can plug in to your home 5 ampere outlets or 15 ampere outlets, but the demands of a class 5 to 8, like in the case of Xos Trucks or in other OEM cases, the demands of the current draw, the state of charge are very different for large vehicles and different utility vehicles, like a garbage truck or a truck which has a lift or a crane on it, or a truck which has other fitments on it, like a tow truck or a rig, things of that nature. There you need a different kind of infrastructure which can address you know, reinstating the state of charge of those vehicles even after large current draws or charge draws by different components of the vehicle. So that's where Hitachi ABB Power Grids, we launched our suite of eMotion solutions back in June of last year, and which is specifically targeted to augment the existing electric infrastructure with solutions that can address all class of vehicles and all suite of vehicles, right? And that is a need. I mean, that's one from a supply and delivery standpoint, like Randy said, but more from also investing in the battery technology and enhancing the ability to carry higher energy density on a vehicle, so that you have longer range, as well as I believe the likes of Xos Trucks, I mean, that's their prime focus. They are trying to solve that puzzle of how do we pack more energy into lesser weight and lesser volume, so that we are able to provide greater payload capacities to our customers with the added advantage of greater range. And like Eric mentioned, I mean, these are some of the questions which are rapidly being solved. I mean, some of the problems which are rapidly being solved, and the innovation R&D in that space is phenomenal.
Great. So, Brad, I over listening, of course, for the last day and a half now of what's coming up, to me, I am even more excited now for dealers than I even was when I decided this was important, because it sounds like you're going to not only have vehicles to sell, but you're going to have all sorts of interesting product solutions for your customers, that you're going to be even more involved with. How does your commercial customer, how are they going to need to get their fleet repowered? How are they going to manage it? Do you see this as a dealer, that this is an upside?
The infrastructure, like we've all been talking about, is the most important. We're going to have to get, if the guy takes the vehicle home, which, like, we've been dealing with HVAC, and on the HVAC side, a lot of those guys take their vehicle home. And I've talked to some of the bigger owners. I said, just going to have to man up, and we're going to have to put a phase 2 charger at the guy's house if he's a good employee. If not, he's going to have to drive to work and pick up a charged vehicle. And he says, I got it. He said, I can do that. And we're dealing with, right now, we're dealing with 5 or 6 different customers. I mean, charging station people, to get them hooked up with these people. So when fall hits, or midsummer, third quarter, fourth quarter, whenever they all start hitting, that the power grid's there. So that the vehicle, they run the vehicle, they put the 150, 180, 250 miles, whatever the vehicle is, and just keep it charged overnight, either at their house or at the shop. And that's what we're working on now, is with the charging station people.
So lots of opportunity for things beyond vehicles, honestly, because that's super. And we're back now to kind of this concept of efficiency, right? I think charging is the big barrier, but it looks like you said, Ashu, it's moving quickly. Lots of opportunity. Who was it yesterday that said that? I think it was Mondar in Jim Press's fireside chat, said that we haven't even imagined the whole opportunity of building the infrastructure is going to create for everybody, right? We're just talking about the surface sales of the vehicles. So Jose, let's dive in. I'm going to dive in now to total cost of ownership, and I'm going to have you hit that off. Ashu's got some numbers, but I'm going to have you start. So.
Yeah, I think first I'll just touch on that piece of infrastructure quickly. Is for us, it's about focusing on the right fleet. So return to base operations is primarily where we were initially focused on, exactly for that reason. We're not quite ready yet to get into the challenge of solving infrastructure at people's homes and other retail locations, although there's certainly an opportunity. I think for us, our biggest target really is getting the vehicle acquisition cost down to parity or close to what we see with internal combustion engines. Again, despite the fact that people do have sustainability targets, there are financial metrics. So that's first and foremost our objective.
How close is that?
I think our target is really about 15%. And again, that really varies depending on the application for the vehicle. But our hope and our goal is to get about 10, 15, 20% above the cost of what people are currently using today. What Xos does a little bit differently from other manufacturers, we have our own chassis and our own battery. So what Ashu was kind of alluding to is we have a bit more control over what that chassis looks like, how that battery configuration is composed, and putting those systems together hopefully takes cost out of that system for the fleet. And so firstly, it starts with a vehicle acquisition cost. And then secondly, of course, reducing things like operations and downtime and really kind of providing a whole suite of services. So as I mentioned, back to our roots, we are fleet operators at heart as far as the founding of our company. And so the key focus, aside from being green, is also being affordable and efficient for fleet operators.
Can you talk at all about the timeline of how things are going, or how far out that target is for you?
Yeah, of course. From a cost standpoint, or from a production,
whatever you want to say.
I think we're close right now in states that already have subsidies in place. We're probably even under what you'd see for traditional combustion engines. So if you're in California, New York, Michigan, Massachusetts, I believe those are some of the big states that have fundings. With those available, we're actually cheaper than a diesel. In other territories, we're not quite there, but our hope is to leverage all this volume and scale that we have nationally for all customers. So in a very short order, our objective is to be, cost competitive all across the country, not just in New York or California.
Well, that's fantastic. Cool. All right, Ashu, go ahead.
Yeah, these are all great points, and like Randy mentioned and Jose mentioned, but I would say that cost of acquisition is just one component of the total cost of ownership for the owners or fleets. I mean, there are a lot of fleets who today measure the total cost of ownership in terms of the cost per pound mile driven by the vehicle, or the cost per parcel or unit delivered to the end customer, right? Those are some of the yardsticks or measures that fleets are using to gauge the total cost of ownership. And if you truly look at, adding to Jose's statement, if you truly look at the ROI in terms of diesel trucks versus, the electric vehicles as of today, the ROI on diesel trucks is between 7 to 10 years if you account for the total cost of ownership, whereas the ROI for electric vehicles is between 3 to 7 years. So that should put things into perspective. But the one challenge which it also presents for all these fleets who have been used to the diesel trucks or the gas-powered trucks in the past is the inability to define the second life for these commercial electric vehicles, right? The industry is unfortunately still not there in terms of defining, okay, what do we do with these batteries? I mean, what do we do with these bodies? Because we are going from metal bodies to fiber composite bodies and things of that nature. We are going from, hard steel chassis, which had more durability, to lighter aluminum frames and things of that nature. And then, the whole battery thing. I mean, there is a whole debate going on around innovation for defining the second life for these batteries and the circular economy, which is still under development. And that's where a lot of fleets are looking at this. I mean, these mobility units, I would want to call them mobility units and not commercial electric vehicles, because you just have a large portfolio, right, from bots to vehicles all the way, right? So this mobility, they're looking at these mobility units being more of an on-lease OPEX, operational expense to them, rather than a capital investment or a capital expenditure to them, right? So and that's where our sister concerns like Hitachi Capital, they are looking at the entire supply chain and how do they finance the whole supply chain and deliver the mobile unit as a service. This is something which is well published by Hitachi, and we have spoken about this in many forums. And our focus right now is in terms of helping our partners define and bring to market what mobility as a service looks like.
Right. Well, there's certainly a lot of discussion around models of new ownership You know, fortunately for Brad, we don't have to do that today. But I think that's something that you'll be facing soon, Brad, right? I mean, even shared ownership as we, et cetera, right? My favorite statement so far around this subject was yesterday when I think it was Lee Kirby from PepsiCo who said, uptime is the new currency. And so I think that's, you know, I'm sure, Jose, that you've been exposed to that terminology. Eric, what are you seeing as far as this complicated way of assessing value and total cost?
Yeah, I think, you know, that model is certainly changing. You know, like we've been talking about earlier, in the early days, it was straight, you know, what's the price of gas? What's the price of your system? And how long is it going to take to pay this off? And I think the model is much more complicated now. There's all sorts of service schedules and maintenance schedules and all the residual, you know, maintenance value that an electrified vehicle can bring to the table. And then how do you quantify the value of sustainability? How do you quantify the value of that, you know, that hybrid sticker on the back of your truck if you're getting, you know, great PR within your communities there? So, you know, I think the model is certainly changing. At the end of the day, there's still a cost to benefit ratio, you know, for everyone, and everyone has their own threshold. So, you know, it's an evolving model. Certainly there's a lot more factors in play now than I think there used to be.
Right. Brad,
if I may, Kathryn, I would want to add to what Eric just mentioned. Absolutely, I agree with what Eric said. And when you look at total cost of ownership, some things that people don't account for are, you know, the reduced cost of insurance that these fleets have to deal with now that they have electric vehicles or electric mobility units, the reduced cost of healthcare for their drivers or their workforce, because you have vehicles where you don't have to go from brake pedal to gas pedal to brake pedal to gas pedal or the clutch and things of that nature, right? So you have lesser knee surgeries or elbow surgeries or shoulder surgeries and what have you. And so there are all these ancillary costs that factor into the equation, and that's defining the new model. And absolutely, Eric, I agree with your statement in terms of, the total cost of ownership is not just bringing the gas cost into parity with the cost of electric supply or electricity supply, but it's much more complicated than that.
Well, and that's going to mean a lot of education for the customers, right, Brad? Do you see that the sales role, that the people that you're going to end up bringing on board are going to change?
I don't know that the customer will roll with whatever's going down at the time. We just have to educate the customer on what the needs are. Every customer may not be able to buy an electric vehicle, but there may be some customers buying combustion units that could use electric and use them better. And it's cheaper for them. It would be better off for them. You got to take it by case basis.
So what I'm saying is, it sounds like, you know, you've been around a bit, and clearly you're willing to open up your mind and understand the complexity of it. But today I heard it was when Rhett and Charlie were talking with Jim about, you know, what it takes to build kind of like the new sales team, right, for commercial as it keeps evolving and changing. And I do think, you know, there are people aging out, and B, that there's going to need to be tools. Ashu, I'm sure you guys are working on them. I'm sure you guys have, Jose, you and Eric have built some internally that you use, but there's going to need to be tools that Brad's team can have to help them when they're talking to a customer to find the right fit for them and to surface all the value that you're extracting. Like you said, Ashu, like if I could go to somebody and I could tell them you're going to save $10,000 a year in insurance, that's a value, right? But you have to be able to pull that out and do that. So it's going to be interesting, I think, Brad, and you know, we're really excited. I don't know if you guys saw, but just the panel earlier, we had a session on team building and what that looks like. And you know, I think that we're really doubled down. We have built a what's called a learning management system, an LMS that for teaching are what we call truck pros, which are the salespeople in the dealership, to teach them about technology and how to use it. It's a big stretch right now, but it's going to have to pick up the pace as well. That's my feeling, Brad. What do you think?
Yeah, we've got to keep everybody trained from top to bottom, from finance to service, because I think you're going to get into past the cost of ownership. The only bad part about the electric that I've seen is it's going to take your service department back in. There's not a lot you can do to these vehicles. I mean, basically windshield wipers, tires, and brakes. And I mean, that's a big hit for the service department, but luckily their big combustion engines keep working on too there. So.
Yeah, I think that who mentioned that they thought there were going to be, I think it was 30 million more people, right? So I think it's not that one's going to necessarily reduce. It's just that the other is going to increase. And so it should keep people busy there, although maybe they'll be working on drones.
Yeah, so like I said, Kathryn, earlier in one of the chats, that you would have people going from being mechanical engineers or people who are mechanical workmen working on these trucks to electrical engineers who are working on these trucks. And to Brad's statement, yes, although the complexity of these electric vehicles has greatly reduced from having more than 6,000 to 16,000 parts on a gas truck or a diesel truck versus having less than 1,000 parts or 900 parts on an electric truck, and thus the reduced complexity in terms of what your servicemen are exposed to. But having said that, it also presents an opportunity that now you would have lesser and lesser people rolling these trucks into service shops for repair or actually demanding having an on-demand model for service delivery or this repair delivery while they are on the road. So yeah, the business constructs and models are going to change and evolve, but that doesn't mean that service engineers will be out of job. It's just that what job they do and how they do it is going to change.
And maybe where they do it. Brad, are you guys doing any remote service? Are you doing mobile service?
We've got 2 mobile units that run out of the Mooresville store for Chevrolet for the fleet. Mm-hmm. And they do on-site pretty much everything. They can't replace your engine on-site, but they can do pretty much all the way up to major repairs on the road.
That's great. Yeah, I think that as you keep building, and I keep thinking back, I love that you call it mobility units, Ashu. That's one of the big takeaways for me that has helped my brain evolve, get to another level. It's just been happening every 10 minutes. But to me, it really does help us, maybe it's computer software students that are going to come and work at Brad in your service department, right? Because it's all about tracking it and knowing it. I had a friend of mine was showing me last week some designs around on freeway stopping places that are solar powered for charging units and pod sleeping. And Jose, I think we need to talk about that one, honestly, because it's really focused around the long haul, right? And what could be happening. So I know that are there any, I guess I'd like to add, my favorite thing is seeing how much the businesses around us have been changing over the last year. So I know we're getting close. We've got about 5 minutes left. Are there any kinds of unique applications, commercial vehicle or commercial mobility unit, whether they're ICE or whether they're EV, that you guys have seen over the last year that you want to mention? Because I have a couple of my favorites, but new vocations, new services, new whatever. No?
I would say none that I'm particularly close to, but I'm familiar with a few people that have certainly in the last year gotten into the disinfecting, cleaning, even mobile, service spaces. So any kind of group that supports or is in the business of sanitizing and cleaning spaces. I think a few folks have been entrepreneurial and really gotten after that. But otherwise, I haven't seen any major trends. Maybe some other folks that are closer to customers have some insight. But
how about anyone else? Brad, what have you seen? It's just lots more delivery, right?
Yeah, it's delivery has taken over the whole fleet world.
Yeah. Well, I don't see that going backwards. Do you guys?
It's one step further to the house.
People's fundamental lifestyle has changed in what they, work from home and being with family and, figuring out how to get things dropped on their front porch rather than having to go out and spend hours and hours trying to find what they're looking for. So I think that certainly is helping to drive. What was it that Ed Pieper in his presentation yesterday said that the delivery, the package delivery, and the return is going to be $850 billion industry in just a few years. So very good to help drive the functionality of electric for sure. Even Jose, even in the medium and heavy duty, because the long mile has to happen to get the final mile to happen. So anything last that somebody wants to contribute before we get ready to sign off?
Well, just to add to that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Eric.
Just to add to that last point, and we were talking about driving efficiencies earlier, and the value of sort of last mile delivery and the role that is now playing in our society. Driving cost out of that process and driving efficiency into that process is a multifaceted aspect. It's not only in the management of the vehicles themselves, but it's in the how quickly those vehicles can turn around and how quickly they can get charged up or refueled or back on the road, and the delivery models have completely changed as well. So there's a lot of aspects of fleet that contribute to that I think are really important and really valuable, that are opening up all sorts of opportunities for the industry.
Yeah, I agree. Even upfits. We haven't really talked much about them, but I think there's going to be some really interesting upfits. Ashu?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with everything that Eric said. And beyond the cost equation, let's not forget safety and sustainability. I mean, back to your point, Eric, that you made early on, that safety and sustainability are also going to define, because the expectations of millennials and Gen Z is very different from the baby boomers and what have you, in terms of how they want to shop, how they want to view at these mobility units,
how they want to work.
Yeah, how they want to
in
work.
this industry.
Yeah, everyone wants to be a digital nomad, and we are testimony to that we are conducting this event on a digital platform, sitting wherever we are, rather than being in one convention center or a hotel.
Right. Well, I have to say, I really appreciate all four of you joining us today. You each contributed significantly to my knowledge and to everyone else, and thank you. I really, really appreciate it. We will be having a panel discussion in a little bit if the audience wants to join, and I welcome all of you to join the breakout room if you would like to answer questions, and thank you very much. It'll be a recording later we can talk about. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Kathryn. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.